Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and you are listening to Networking RX, a podcast where we devote time and energy to professional relationships and business networking. Again, thanks for listening, subscribing, and referring others. As you know, occasionally I get guests on here, and occasionally I get guests to come back on here. Back on April 2nd, I released a podcast with Michelle Tillis Lederman, and she is the author of The Connector's Advantage, and we spent some time on that program talking about The Connector's Advantage. I wanted to get her back on because she had a book prior to The Connector's Advantage, which I'll talk about here in a minute, that I really want to kind of spend some time on with her, and I didn't want to come up with an hour-long episode, so we broke it up into two. I got her back on. But Michelle is one of Forbes' top 25 networking experts, and she is the author of 4 books, including The Connector's Advantage, The 11 Laws of Likability, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. And she is the Connections creator and CEO of Executive Essentials, which provides customized communications and leadership programs for Fortune 500, not-for-profits, universities, and government clients. She got her start. We talked about this when we spoke before. She got her start in finance, and was, well, I don't want to say summarily dismissed, but a good letting go, because it led her into all of this and providing value for all of us. But she was also a NYU professor, and she is regularly appearing on the likes of NBC, CBS, Fox, NPR, the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNBC, and others. And she's known for helping people work better together and advance their individual impact. Michelle, welcome back. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Happy to be back.
Now, we talked in the past about the Connector's Advantage, and if for those out there who have had the opportunity to get the Connector's Advantage, if you haven't, get it. But if you read in the beginning of it, she kind of does a review of the 11 laws of likability, and but there's also a separate book out there that really kind of delves into it. And I wanted to get her back on and kind of talk about the 11 laws. But I guess my first question is you know, you write this second book, and in the second book you really kind of give away the first book, and I'm trying to kind of understand, well, okay, why did she do that? And I get it. You're a connector, and as we talked about in the first episode, you believe in abundance, and that doesn't really diminish the work that you've done. But anyhow, share with us why did you do that?
I say right there that I build on the concepts. So the 11 Laws was my first ever book, and it was an answer to the question of how did I build my business? And you know, people kept asking me, how did I do it? And I was like, okay, well, this is everything I think, and this is the way in which my mind works. And I put that all on paper. And because it builds, I didn't want people to be like, oh, I don't understand this because I didn't read that book. And I didn't want it to be a barrier for them to get this information. So I do a synopsis of each of the laws. I mean, certainly you're not going to get the live the law exercises, and you're not going to get the depth of the explanation. You're getting literally the refresh your memory chapter summaries, but it gives you at least enough that you can understand the concepts that are being referenced.
Okay, fair enough. I'll accept that answer. The 11 Laws of Likability, for our listeners, is really a book that's divided into 3 separate parts, and it all centers on conversations, or having conversations, and every conversation has a before, during, and after, and she kind of gets into each of those. I don't want to get into the 11 laws, but if you could kind of take us through the life cycle of a conversation. With again, I don't expect you to talk about all the laws, but what's the important thing about before a conversation, during a conversation, then ultimately after a conversation? Because I find that really trips people up. If I get questions when I'm out talking to people, it's always about small talk, having conversations.
Well, let's do this. I'll tell you the laws of what's before and what's after, and we'll focus maybe a little bit on the anatomy of the conversation as you asked.
Okay. Yeah.
Otherwise, we're hitting all 11, and I know we won't have enough time for that. But before the conversation, for me, authenticity is the thread that holds us all together. So that's kind of foundational to likability and to connection is authenticity, is being real, because you can't connect with somebody who's not being real. So before the conversation, you want to think about the law of self-image, the law of perception, and the law of energy. And that's kind of, how others see you, how you see yourself, and the energy you're bringing to an exchange.
Okay.
That's kind of all getting your head into the game. The anatomy of a conversation is the next 4 laws, and that's curiosity, listening, similarity, and mood memory. And I'll come back and explain those a little bit more.
Okay.
And then after the conversation is really where you want to think about, how do I move from conversation to connection? And that's where you want to think about the laws of familiarity, giving, and patience. So
that's good.
A little bit of an overview. But when we think about the anatomy of conversation, people are always saying, as you said, like, I hate those big events, and I don't know how to start a conversation, and I don't know, just so uncomfortable. And I say, when you don't know where to start, just start by being curious. Ask a question you actually want to know the answer to.
Right.
And pose it in the form of an open question. So not, did you like that speaker? Yeah. Because there's nowhere to go, right?
Right.
But you can say, what did you like best about that speaker? What resonated for you? Now we're going to find out something that might be meatier. So it really is all about the phrasing of the question. And so there's a lot of different types of openers. You can think about situational, right? So we use, if we're at an event, right, referencing the speaker, we can use geographical. Hey, know any good restaurants in this area? We can use, aspirational, hypothetical. Like, there's all these categories. You can use the news. You can use the weather. I mean, I got to tell you, you wouldn't believe the conversations I've gotten into where it started with the weather.
Yeah.
And it seems immaterial, but there is some serious weather going on in this world right now. And, if you go back a few years in Jersey, we had Hurricane Sandy here. Well, let me tell you, my in-laws live down the shore, and it's 5-6 years later, and there's still people that aren't in their homes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's interesting because, money gets thrown in a lot of places, but they were not throwing it to New Jersey. And it really generates a conversation, and it's fascinating. And so really there are so many different topics that you can think about, but what's most important is, as you think about the progress of the conversation, the next thing that you have a choice to do is to listen. Well, you don't have a choice about the listening, right? So once we start with curiosity, we're moving to the law of listening. And
well, I mean, not to interrupt, but people do have a choice about listening. You choose to listen or don't, and some people don't. So I think
if your goal is to connect and to
Sure.
build rapport, then you don't have a choice.
Right.
Because you're not listening, you're not making somebody feel good, you're not learning anything about them, and you're not going to connect. So,
Exactly.
So you have a choice, but not if you actually want to connect. So as we move into, we've asked that question, we're getting information, we are listening. And then you can either listen and probe, right? So you listened, and now you can be probative, and you can ask some more questions about it. You can dig a little bit deeper. You can show that you are listening, that you heard, and that you are curious, and you're asking more. Be careful, because you don't want to interrogate. You don't want a machine gun question, because somebody will be like, dude,
Right.
Where's the big light in my face? So one is to listen and probe, and you should do that. And the other is to listen and share. And this is really important, because when you think about that opening question that you want to know the answer to, you better be willing to answer it as well.
Mm-hmm.
You better be comfortable and interested in sharing something about your opinion on that topic, or your resources on that issue, or whatever it might be. And if you're not willing to share, it might not be the best topic to ask.
Gotcha.
So this is what I call the dance part of the conversation, because you're listening and probing, you're listening and sharing, they're then asking some questions of you, and we're getting a little back and forth, and we're in the heart of the conversation. Right? And so this is when you're looking to extend. And we're extending the conversation through this listening and probing, listening and sharing, and we're seeking similarity. So we're looking for those moments that cause us to feel that connection, that moment of, oh, you went to that school, or oh, you know that person.
Yeah.
So these are the laws of similarity, the laws of association, because people like them, and people trust people, that there is some kind of third party, right? If you know A and I know A and A likes you, then I'll like you.
Right.
Right? Let's go back to Logic 101. And so if A, then B, then B, then C, then A, then C. So that's what's happening. And you're looking for those moments of commonality. And when we connect with others, we don't connect on, what do you do? Right? And there's nothing wrong with asking the question, what do you do? But maybe not the first question, and maybe not the only question. And maybe not if they don't do something in related fields that you're like, I'm done.
Right.
Because when somebody asks me the question, what do you do? Oh, I hate it. I'm so bad at that. Here's my pitch answer. I instead say, well, this weekend, or today, or for fun, or I'll answer it so many different ways other than, I'm a speaker and trainer and coach, and I write books, because it just feels like a sales pitch. And I'd rather find the things that are our common experiences, our common values, our common interests, our common hobbies, our common passions. So all those things are things that we really connect on. And when we discover those, then things happen. So I was just at a luncheon, and somebody came in, and she was with CBS. And I was like, oh, what area do you report on? And she said, travel. I was like, oh my God, I love travel. I'm like, what are your favorite places? We just started talking. I've been to 70 countries, and we started comparing notes. And it was this fabulous conversation because I found something that we had of a common interest.
It's interesting. I just finished a book by a guy by the name of Bill Troy. It's called Clicksand. Its subtitle is How Online Marketing is Destroying Your Business. Anyhow, it's neither here nor there, but he talks about that exact point in there. He said, our strongest connections with people aren't when they like us. Our strongest connections when we find out that we like the same things. Whatever it is, alma mater, and we both went to wherever, we both did this. You obviously worked in public accounting. I worked in public accounting. Different segments of it, but we certainly have war stories we can share. It's really a powerful lesson, because there's hardly anybody on the planet that we don't have something in common with.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I think of it as a scavenger hunt. I want you to think about it as being a detective and trying to uncover those pieces of information. When I do some of my training programs, I actually start with a scavenger hunt. And I say, your job is to find out something non-obvious that you guys have in common. And so, if I'm at the same company, I'm like, well, you can't use the industry or the company or the geography. So what can you find? What are the questions you're going to ask? And it's always really surprising. Like, we end up with like, oh, there's 3 gardeners over here, like they all like gardening. I'm like, yeah, I'm not standing over with you. I'm going to be standing over with these people who like the eating.
Right.
Or like the traveling, or like the scuba diving, or like the animals, or whatever it might be. And so when we think about, what do we want to share about ourselves? We want to share about the things that we really are into. If you're a parent, talking about kids is easy. 50% of the population are parents.
Yeah.
If you have a pet, animals is a great thing to connect on. So there's very low-hanging fruit in your life already. What's the next vacation you're going on? Everybody's always thinking about a vacation.
Right.
even if it's a dream one that's not really being planned, there's a conversation to be had. And so what's happening in this part of the conversation is we're looking for those commonalities, but we're also looking for our follow-up. We're looking for what's going to be our next point of contact, because you don't want to close that conversation down until you have it, because it's really hard to move from conversation to connection if we don't have what's the next reason for us to be in touch. And sometimes I'm a little sneaky. Sometimes I'll realize there's something I can do or some connection I can make, but I'll hold it until the next point of contact to extend our contact. I could take my phone out and I could give you the number right then and there.
Yeah.
But it's better to then elongate and extend that point of contact, because that's going to increase the number of times we're in touch. That's going to increase our familiarity, and that's going to strengthen the connection.
Oh, that's great advice. Yeah, that's great advice. I'm the one who'll pull out the phone, right? Here, let me impress you. Let me show you what I can do. And I probably need to hold back more.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But, write on that card what the follow-up is. I always say, if I don't write on the card that you give me, then you better write on the card I give you, because I'm going to, I've got a graveyard of cards I'm looking over at my right, that if I don't write on it, I don't know what the follow-up is.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of conversations. So once you find that follow-up, then you're ready to close down that conversation. And that follow-up could simply be, hey, I'll link into you. It could be, oh, hey, I'm going to follow up and ask you about this. Maybe we'll grab some coffee, or whatever it is that you figure out the follow-up to be. And then here's where you have to be careful. So we've had this great conversation, and you're now done. You're ready to move on. You're like, okay, I need to regroup, regain some energy. I'm a little drained. Or you're just like, hey, you know what? I would like to meet some more people.
Mm-hmm.
When you close down the conversation, one of the things you need to remember is the law of mood memory.
Okay.
And this is the idea that people remember more how you make them feel than anything that you say. And in this moment, if you make them feel like you're done, you might squash all the good of that conversation.
Right.
You start looking over their shoulder, looking at your watch, being like disinterested, stopping listening, eyes all over the place. They're going to be like, okay. And now they're a little uncomfortable, and now maybe they want to avoid you. So when you think about closing down the conversation, you want to think about how to make sure that you close with making them feel good. And I get into the book in lots of different ways that you can make somebody good and how to impact mood memory, whether it's with our body or with our words or, all of those things. So that's really what I call the anatomy of a conversation.
Interesting. No, that's very insightful. I'm sitting here taking notes. I love the last one, the mood memory, because it's something we don't think about. I think a lot of people don't think about any of it. A lot of people think about conversations as, okay, what am I going to say? And it really has less to do with what we say and the things we get them saying, and then us chiming in, which gets us through the first two laws, and then finding the similarities, looking for those, the so-called the scavenger hunt. But the mood memory, just how we're leaving somebody, mm-hmm. hopeful or disappointed, or I totally get that. Go ahead.
It could be energized. It could just be warm. There's so many different ways we can make somebody feel.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's off-put, right? I've been told sometimes I'm a bit much, and people are like, whoa, tone it down,
Right.
And understanding that we need to pick up on those clues that other people are giving us so that we can make those adjustments.
Okay. Last time we spoke, getting towards the end here, I asked how people could help, and I won't make you reveal a number, but you were looking for Amazon reviews for the Connector's Advantage. For people listening out there, Michelle's goal was to have 100 reviews on Amazon of the Connector's Advantage, and hopefully you're there. But even whether she is or she isn't, everybody needs to go and, one, buy the book and buy both books. I think Amazon will suggest both books, and certainly put a review there. But you've already asked that. What else is out there that somebody can help you with?
Well, yes, I would like reviews on both books. So thank you for referencing both books. And honest reviews are really greatly appreciated. Really, what I love to do is be with a group of people, whether it is 35 people for a day of training or 3,000 people for a keynote speech. I do both and everything in between. And if you are, with an association or even within your internal organization, if you are looking for some really interactive, really experiential training or a talk for a small group, reach out to me. I'd love to see how I can help.
And the best way to get a hold of you is still at your website, MichelleTillis.Lederman.com.
Yep, it's Michelle with 2 L's. Tillis is Tillis. Lederman is Lederman.com. And that's my hub. That's where you can find my YouTube channel, my blog, my LinkedIn, my Insta, my Facebook, my Twitter. Like, I'm on it all.
Yeah. I've done the same thing, frankagan.com. It's just easier. I'm trying to give people all sorts of URLs. They're all kind of there. Well,
and that's also the best place for them to go to get the gift pack. I give away some free chapters, an interview preparation checklist. I give away an assessment on your networking style. There's lots of goodies I give away, and you can just go to the website, enter your email address, or even just go to /gift pack and see all the goodies.
Sounds great. Michelle, thank you so much for being on the first time. Double thanks for being on the second time. Let's stay in touch. I'm sure that I've learned a lot here. I've learned a ton. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.